All right. Hey, good morning, YouTube. We made it back to Monday. Whether or not that's a good thing or not, I guess we can argue about. But hey, what's going on out there? Hope everybody had a good weekend. We all survived unscathed, hopefully. And welcome back. Thanks for checking in. So I got quite the weather out there in the northeast with their snowstorm coming in. It's like we got another storm rolling in off the coast here this weekend, or not this weekend, the middle of the week here. Tuesday night, Wednesday, I think we're getting this big green mess rolling in on over here. So the weather's continuing to do its thing for the winter, which is needed. Snow in Canada, no surprise there. Hey, good morning, Ann. How are you doing? Welcome. Thanks for checking in. Everything's good out your way. I don't think I know exactly where you're at, but you're out in that eastern side, I think. But winter weather doing its thing, moving right along. So checking in on aftermath of the earthquakes out there in Alaska last week. We talked about there. It's just doesn't seem to get any better. You talk about things going bad on you. Nearly 1,400 aftershocks were after that earthquake on Friday. Pretty significant. There was a lot of people being interviewed and social media posts and stuff. People just can't get back to sleep days after because they keep feeling aftershocks. They got a lot of people shook up after the fact, making it difficult. But little PTSD, I guess you could say, kicking in a little bit after the fact. But there's like a GS map of the aftershock spread. Says here the large dot directly in the north of the city was Friday's quake, which I believe would be this one right here. The red dots are shakes in the previous 24 hours. The yellow dots from the past week. Virtually all of them are since Friday. And this was updated just last about midnight or so. That zooms in a little bit. You can see tons of activity. So yeah, lots of people having trouble getting about with their daily lives with all that going on. Wondering if it's another big one rolling in on them. And I don't know how that's affected any further damage. They haven't talked about that. There were several 5.0s, which can do minor damage, especially if something's already on the verge. .593 are magnitude 2.0 or greater, 17 at least 4.0, 5 or at least 5.0. But they could definitely feel those probably that are above 2.0. And the animals probably, the environment probably feels it all. They're really probably shooken up. You can imagine. I don't know if the bear's awake from a hibernation, but everybody else is probably a little shook up. Hey, Billy Bird Outdoors is with us. Good morning. How you doing? Okay, and you're in NorCal? All right. I didn't realize you were that close. And as it says here, though, when they're talking to the earthquake people, we're definitely not surprised to see an event of this magnitude happen in this area. It's just been a matter of time. It's like something happening in San Francisco or LA. Everybody's just been waiting for it, but there's a ton of links further down on this with all the different articles on this earthquake. So putting that in the description box below there. If anybody wants to follow up with any of the earthquake news events, boiled water advisories, things are closed, all the road damage, which there was some pretty significant road damage too, collapsed roads and such, probably changing some routes, railroad impassable tracks So that's going to affect getting goods and services into different parts of Alaska. You got to figure Anchorage is one of the main hubs. A lot of people living out in the, even if you weren't near the earthquake, it's still going to affect you with what you have show up at your grocery store or other things. But people that live outside those areas are pretty resilient. They're pretty planned ahead. Especially this time of winter, you figure they got to have a plan to subsist a lot of times on their own. But just a follow up on that. Hey, what's going on, Billy Bird? Drying clothes. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the big one necessarily. I think the what is it, like the 1964 or something like that earthquake in Alaska that had like an 8-foot escarpment that it made from an earthquake is like their standard that they're expecting to happen in the future. But it was like out there where nobody was around, but it made the like the Bering Sea receded away from the harbors and stuff. At that time, it was pretty significant. But they've got a lot of evidence of some pretty bad stuff that can happen up there. I don't think it's the big one by their standards at all. Hey, the Farkas, good morning. What's up? Yeah, get that coffee in. I'm still trying to catch up. See what's just trying to catch up on getting through the weekend. You know? What else is going on? Well, I guess unless you've been living under a rock, Paris is practically burned down. Riots over the taxes for gasoline and stuff. They started protesting, and then the police pushed back, and everything started burning down. Which is unfortunate because the people are having misplaced anger. And that's the biggest problem we're going to have with these various riots, I guess you'd say. People protesting are going to be harming property and things of the people who have nothing to do with it, except for a few cases. I think there was a couple of gas stations like burned down, but they're protesting against the government. But all the people, the victims, are all the fellow citizens burning their cars, burning, destroying property along streets and stuff. It's like that's not the point, but unfortunately, that's kind of the way it ends up. But this is, if you want to compare this, being in the middle of France like this in Paris, it's be like having a protest like this in Times Square, but also coupled with, as far as the significance and the size of the area and just the national persona, I guess you'd say. It'd be like having a combination of Times Square and Pennsylvania Avenue, with all the not Pennsylvania Avenue. What's the, just, imagine in DC with all the different statues and, down by the Washington Monument and all that stuff like that. Or where this stuff is going on at. But it's just protesters stole rifle from cops, but apparently they didn't use them against the cops, which is interesting. Planning for a day ahead, maybe. Torched cars, smashed windows with clubs and axes, but what good does that do? That's not who you're protesting against, right? Using tear gas, water cannons, lots of interesting pictures coming out. This began as a rebellion against the fuel tax hike, but has expanded into weeks of civil unrest spread across the country yesterday. So I don't know that I've seen a lot of pictures from around the country. It's mostly been out of Paris, which is the biggest mental, psychological effect. Graffiti. If you ever watch the Tour de France, they go by all these monuments on the bike ride, and They're just destroying a lot of that stuff. Storefronts getting burned out. People had nothing to do with it. Why are they leaving government buildings unscathed? Would be my question. So just know that you might not be the target of the protest, but you might be a victim anyway, just because you're on the way by. I guess that apply mostly to the big city folks. It's funny that graffiti there said "smash capitalism," but yet capitalism doesn't promote taxes. That's the government's thing. That's not a capitalist thing. People's misplaced anger, mixed messaging getting sent, I guess you could say. So yeah, you got to figure there's a lot of the communist type groups that are embedded in this. Supposed self-proclaimed anarchist groups, probably, but not true anarchists. They just want a different form of big government. But Macron was over there in Argentina with the rest of the head honchos at the G20 and had to come back to all this. There was some video I saw where the police were confronting with the people, and the police took their helmets off and kind of, they didn't take any, nobody took any aggressive action. They basically stood down and like, we're not going to do anything violent here. We're just going to stand here in the way. It was kind of a truce, I guess you would say, statement. When they all just took their helmets down and like, okay, let's just calm down here a little bit, type of action. Our previews, and well, yeah, it takes a lot of the invaders could have similar things happen here. Farkas won't rebuild in the town, require more taxes. Well, not when you destroy private businesses like that, you know. That just takes people's businesses have to rebuild themselves, you know. I think this is the president visiting the areas after the fact, getting a few boos in there and whatnot. Oh, my video froze on me, it looks like. Let's get out of there. That's not going so well. Anyway, better looking at the aftermath anyway. But it's just some reminders of how things could go sideways pretty quick. Even for a cause you might support, but they go sideways and don't focus on the problem because of people all intermixed within. Hey, Alicia, good morning. How are you? Yeah, if you hear demonstrations coming, get your car off the street. They just have a tendency to want to burn them, right? And I'm not sure how this is affecting gas shortages in France. Cleanup going on today. There are also protesters in Lyon, and they're asking for 4 more weeks. More protests coming up. So it looks like they're rolling this out through Christmas. And there's talk about a state of emergency being imposed. But I don't think that's officially been put into place. So that's just what it is. The protests definitely seem to be well organized, something kind of George Soros would fund type of thing. It's a yellow vest, all wearing that. I don't know if that's a union thing or if that's they all went out and bought vests type of thing. So it would appear that another socialist revolution is in full swing in France, as if the last one wasn't bad enough. Even says here they're in an insurrectional climate, but to what end is the question. Power bees that are in control definitely want more violence. They can institute more control. That's probably what's the real agenda is. Just have somebody stoking the other side to get what you want. The controlled opposition, if you will. There's also a article on the Zero Hedge is linked below, as they're considering a state of emergency, all options considered by the president. That's what their article is mostly about, is the next steps forward. They got some photos out of the Guardian and stuff in here. Lots of people probably agree, but again, the issue is what comes out the other side of this. If they do succeed, right? What happens when you get what you want? So there's that. Hey, Barry Wood, good morning. How you been doing? Winter treating you well so far? Reported size of the protest is between 36 and 75,000. Last week saw over 110,000 protesters. So it's, yeah, you're not stopping a protest of that size. That gets to that fact that after there's so much, after there's a certain size, the police forces can't stop it. Once it gets to a certain critical mass, I guess you'd say. I have a hard time believing this is I don't know, what would you say? Right, it says there's a right wing. There's a lot of people. But diesel taxes are the big cause of it, and people are upset. And here's the key interview piece. Here's a quote from Cloud, a resident in the affluent 16th district. So Reuters interview, and the Cloud says the violence is increasing at an exceptional rate, exponential rate. The state is losing control. It is scary. They cannot let this happen. Maybe the army should intervene. There you go. People begging for their own enslavement, basically. Yeah, bring the army in. That'll do everybody a lot of good, right? People don't know what they're asking for. The state is losing control. Maybe the state should have less control. Maybe that's the answer. People never think about it when they know what they're asking for. So yeah, like we talk about here, people are going to beg for state intervention in a lot of these situations and get what they want, and thus the police state grows, unfortunately. Yeah, Tommy Stock 64. Good morning. How you doing? Right, Tommy Stock, the maker of the vest, is making a killing, ain't they? If they're selling, hundreds of thousands of vests for this stuff, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Yes, sir. Yeah, that's I guess you'd call capitalism in action, right? Or crony capitalism, whichever it is. But yeah, if you're selling hundreds of thousands of your vests, you're probably doing all right. Snow today for you, Barry. Right on. Snow in Utah. I've seen that, Alicia, right? Do you think France will lower taxes? Yeah, what are the odds that'll happen? Doesn't that all go through Parliament anyway? Does Macron have anything to do with that? I guess you'd have to wait and see, Alicia. I don't know that this type of thing will ever get taxes reduced. Might get a little more police state imposed on them. That might be about it. Which will require more taxes, of course, to support the police forces. But when you're getting numbers in the hundreds of thousands, you're starting to get to a point to where everybody knows everybody else. Everybody knows who's on the other side. They probably eat dinner in the same household, if you will. You're going to get to the point of families against each other in a lot of ways in these things. If it stays at that size, you can't start rolling out the army on the streets with that many protesters out there and don't think there aren't conflicts of interest. Yes, confused capitalism. That's one way to put it, Tommy Stock, right? Somebody's taking advantage of it, at least, for sure. Well, we're having our own little protest, I guess you'd say. Nothing like this, but tied into the migrant caravan. I guess there was some rallies in Tucson, down in Arizona, and a little bit of protests going on, and some people got a little physical or whatever, I guess. Nothing like what we see in Paris, of course, but I was just checking in on the migrant thing, and the communists are coming out full support, of course. I guess they start calling it the Families Belong Together rally. And then there's a counter protest called a Patriot Movement. Is a counter protesting them. So I guess there was two sides that kind of sparred with each other. But it was definitely small scale compared to a lot of other things we've seen. But this was in Arizona. I just hit on it because I did see that they arrested a couple people. They don't even have an article. They just have the pictures. But there was a separate article on the caravan. Mexico, being racist that they are, shut down the shelter for them. They're citing poor sanitary conditions. And there's been quite a bit documentation of quite a bit of documentation of the health condition of a lot of the people. A lot of TB going around, a lot of the flu, a few cases of more severe diseases, but that wouldn't be expected. That would be expected in any population really that size. But the TB and stuff that we don't usually deal with was quite sizable. Close conditions like that shelter just have that stuff spread around. But the Mexicans shut it down, and I don't know what they did with them. So the shelter's been shut down to the local government. The closure came after advocates raised the alarm about asylum seekers becoming sick with respiratory problems and chickenpox amid worsening conditions at the temporary shelter. This is where 6,000 of them have been living in wet and muddy conditions brought on by heavy rain. So I guess they're getting the same type of weather pretty much everybody else does. That makes sense. Despite rain and subsequent flooding, many asylum seekers have been forced to sleep outdoors, with some sharing makeshift tents while others took cover under cardboard boxes. Tijuana government said asylum seekers have been moved to a new temporary shelter at a former concert venue, which is farther from the border. The new facility, roughly 10 miles from the border, will be run by federal authorities. So the new Mexican president, Manuel Obrador, I guess took office Saturday. So that's new. Mexicans got a new president. Made the issue at the border a priority as he took power, signing a pact with 3 Central American countries, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, aimed at trying to deter asylum seekers and migrants from making their way north. Interesting. The agreement seeks to add jobs to the Central American region and address the issues prompting asylum seekers to flee, which include violence and economic and political instability. Obrador has also said that he hopes to reach an agreement with governments and companies in the U.S. and Canada for greater investment in developing Central American countries and southern Mexico, so that residents won't feel the need to look north for better opportunities. So that's a change of pace for Mexico. So the first dignitaries greeted by the new president as an inauguration was Vice President Pence and Ivanka Trump. Why she's going, I don't know. I wouldn't call it that. That's not a foreign dignitary in my mind, but whatever. Lopez Obrador also expressed positive sentiments toward Trump, saying he has only received respectful treatment from the U.S. leader. As Mexico's new president seeks to deter Central Americans from moving north, Trump has been equally determined to stop them from entering the U.S. So you figure if we get a little bit of support from Mexico, this might actually work out. As Mexico's president seeks to deter Central Americans from moving north, yada, yada. We know about the tear gas incident. Since the tear gas incident, hundreds of asylum seekers have opted to self-deport back to their home countries, with many citing fear of violence at the border as their reason for choosing to return to the nations they fled. And you got to figure if they were scared off by a little tear gas, it must not be that bad down there to begin with, right? Just a thought. But a little bit of changing developments with the new Mexican president, changing the tone a little bit, I guess you'd say. But there's still quite a few down there. Some of the problems still remain. But if they can get it organized and seek asylum in a organized manner, it might go through unscathed to get them removed from the border a little bit, do it organized, and those that justify asylum will get it, and I guess the rest will have to go back. I guess would be kind of the way to look at it. Hey, LS, good morning. Ann says they want $20 billion from us so they can build infrastructure in Mexico and Honduras. They must be smoking crack. They'll probably get it, Ann. $20 billion is a drop in the bucket to the Federal Reserve. They just put the digits on the computer. Doesn't mean nothing. It's all made up. 20 billion, make it 200 billion. Why don't we just, up it a little bit, It's such a farcical number. It doesn't really matter. It's just like Greenspan said, we can guarantee benefits of any amount, but how much they're actually worth is the question. That's what they can't guarantee, but they can make up numbers all along if they want to. So if Mexico wants 20 billion, sure, give them 20 billion. Nobody cares. No skin off their back. They just leverage it and make interest off of it and continue to move forward. Well, what did Barry say? Barry had a good point. Barry, good point. Yeah, we did the same thing, asking for martial law and passing the Patriot Act after 9/11. Yeah, the people respond to make a reaction that's in their own, that works against their own self-interest, if that's the way to put it. It's unfortunate, but that's what's similar to Paris. People are asking to be oppressed for their own safety, of course, right? For our own safety. Farkas says we should just buy Mexico and slowly Americanize it from north to south. I don't know. Can we Americanize America first? I don't know that we might want to solve our own problems before we try to take that route. Alicia thinks it's a good plan, though. I have my concerns. We have enough problem with Americanizing Americans. It's difficult to envision us being able to Americanize Central America or Mexico down to Central America. Yeah, and good point. We don't have much room if we got fire survivors and others living in Walmart parking lots. Right, and order out of chaos, and however the chaos is created, who's going to restore order to it, and for their own benefit. Yeah, Paris has that ability to do that. Let's see what comes out of that, and then kind of the similar chaos at the border. What is established out of that? We shall see, I guess. Hey, Roger Wilco, good morning. Welcome to the chat. Slave names checked in. Seems like everybody's being hurting in the metro areas. Indeed, and that works against our own self-interest as well. You could do a whole discussion on that issue alone. Billy Bird says Mexicans will take our money, then years down the line want their land back, keeping the money and want welfare on top. Oh, so we would just take the land and push the Mexicans out? They wouldn't stay there? I'm not sure how this whole purchase thing would work out. I don't know that we could displace millions of people just because we bought the territory from the government. Somebody would disapprove of that. Um, Now you're talking. Well, at least it would be, unlike South Africa. At least it would be compensation, right? Do they have public property in Mexico, don't they? Um, but that's the situation at our border. Sounds like it's calming down a little bit. The majority of them get removed from being right next to the border. Makes it less likely that there'll be another mass human wave assault like we had during that tear gas incident that has become infamous. But if the Mexican government changes course and actually works to prevent some of these migrations on their end, it'll definitely make a difference. So that's kind of the wrap up today, folks. Kind of what I had pegged out. Anything else going on out there? Oh, Sparks checked in with us. Hey, good morning. How you doing? Are you still living in the proverbial Walmart parking lot? I would assume. There's lots of weather coming in. We got a lot more rain coming up this week. Maybe a little bit of snow on your end. Depends on where you're at. But we might be getting some snow on this end. Yeah, Tommy Stock, Trump's 4D chess. Well, it's like he's playing 20D chess with this whole bump stock ban, right? With bump stock and other accessories, it's all just part of 20D chess because, he's going to get it, but he's going to get it kicked back by the courts and be vindicated because he tried or something. Some BS that people keep trying to justify it. uh, yeah. So what else significance going out there and out there in the parts of the world or parts of the country, I guess, that it's got the winter weather that's kind of the biggest thing. Those earthquakes in Alaska, of course, we talked about at the beginning. But hopefully it'll be a while before we have any big life-changing events around here to continue to push forward with. Okay, Sparks, good luck with that. Let us know when you move over the mountain. I imagine you have to deal with the FEMA types until you can get your property settled and get all that taken care of. Yeah, Roger, we're getting some good snow up there. This Sierra's been getting socked pretty good the last couple. This last week alone, more coming. So I think we're going to be doing all right this year. The way so far, it's above average, as the meteorologist says it. And volcanoes, borders, and demons. We touched on it all. I don't remember mentioning demons, but I guess you could say all politicians are demons of some form or another, right? uh, all right, folks. So I guess that'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for checking in. We'll keep our head on a swivel here to see what else is going down. The G20 just ended, so there's all people handshaking and grinning. Something bound, bad deals were bound to have come out of that. So we'll have to see what else comes out of that. But Wars and rumors of wars, you never know, continue. The oil prices jumped back up a little bit after the G20 based upon something they did over there. I think it was the Chinese kind of semi-agreement. Oil jumped up about $3. That's not too terrible, but it's a movement in the opposite direction of where it was headed. So that hurts the pocketbook, especially this time of year. We can't get that down a little bit further. But thanks for checking in, everybody. Oh, Roger, you're down there in Clark? Yeah, your water situation down there is a lot more dire. And after they told him you couldn't steal water from like Lincoln County, White Pine County, it's definitely looking bad. LS read that Air Force released a memo saying EMP threat is increasing, and mentioned East Coast. Well, an EMP threat of that size is most definitely a state-sponsored act. So who's going to do it? The Russians, the Chinese, the EU, the Germans, our own government? I always refer back to the Jericho scenario on something like that. I think that show was probably more over the target than that's why it got shut down. I think that's what is our most likely threat, is our own internal forces not being happy with the way things are going and shut it all down. So have a good day, folks. We'll see you back here on Wednesday, if not beforehand, somewhere out there on the interwebs. If you all aren't subscribed to Toxic Threads, trying to grow our channel back, help Alicia out, doing stuff on population control yesterday, just giving you the communist example of where we're headed if they continue to get their way. Go check that stuff out. But have a good one. Live free.